Today's episode of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast is brought to you by King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry, Bavarian Grill, and Ye Olde Butcher Shop. King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry, a longtime retail and repair shop for, you guessed it, clocks and jewelry. Everything from grandfather clocks to mantle clocks, wall clocks. Hey, if you just need to get the battery in your watch replaced, King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry has you covered. Not only that, they are also a gold and silver exchange. So if you have any gold coins, silver coins that you're looking to trade in for cash on the spot, King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry has you covered there as well. They are located at 1201 North Central Expressway, having served Plano for over 30 years. King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry. And now, let's podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Justin Thomas, sports editor for our Denton County papers, as well as Brian Murphy, sports editor for Frisco, Little Elm, and Salina. And gentlemen, we're here to talk some more year in review. So last week we began recapping the athletics years for all of our markets. We're going to go through the rest of the month, every Monday, recapping a few of our markets, one by one, just kind of recapping the year that was in high school sports. Last week we touched on Plano, Mesquite, and Rowlett, so if you haven't had a chance to, please check that podcast out. And this week we're going to actually try to hammer out 4 markets. Somehow we're going to try to cram that into one podcast. We're going to talk about Carrollton, the Colony, Lake Cities, and Little Elm. So let's get right to it then. Let's start with the one market of those 4 that hoisted a state championship in 2017-18, that being out in Carrollton. Justin, very familiar with this market. Just kind of where do you, might as well start there with Hebron and the volleyball team and what they were able to do. Just kind of, just wherever you want to take this, recap the year that was in Carrollton athletics.
Well, yeah, the Lady Hawks did it again, 3rd straight state title in volleyball this season. I was, going through trying to look at some kind of records. Some of them are kind of hung, but some of the yearbooks from the state tournament have some good info. And the best I could say, they're only the 2nd team ever to win 3 state titles in a row at the largest classification in volleyball. So another great year for Hebron volleyball, and they just dominated again. Last year, didn't lose a set in the whole playoff run. This year, they only lose 1 set. It's in the very first round against Denton Geyer. Don't lose a set after that.
Wow.
They're going up against teams that have finished ahead of them in district, or were typically ranked ahead of them for some reason in the state rankings and stuff, but none of that mattered. They just rolled everybody again.
It's so you've covered this team during all 3 of these title runs. Do you was there a sense kind of throughout the season that they would be capable of replicating what they had done the 2 previous years, or was there any element of surprise when they were like, oh wow, they're doing this once again?
No, I wouldn't say I was too surprised. I give head coach Karen Keeney a little bit of a tough shake over there because she can be a little bit of a sandbagger at times. But every preseason story is, how are we going to replace this? We can't do this, and but they always do. And they always get back to the playoffs.
She does a great job of just managing expectations externally.
But they lost some key players. But whenever you have a player like Donna Rollins and some of the other players that they had coming back around here, I wasn't surprised at all. So.
I remember Hebron played at the Kohl Center right after Prosper did when I was covering.
Yeah, and
Prosper.
I think you saying there was the best team you've ever seen.
Oh my gosh! Like even before the game started, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a high school volleyball team. They're all so tall and so fundamentally sound, even just in warm-ups. I was like, wow. Yeah. And then I watched like the first set and a half, and Rollins was by far the best player I saw all year.
Yeah. Well, they always seem to rebuild. They always seem to be playing their best at the end of the season. They're not afraid to work on some things and run some different rotations out, especially in the playoffs. They'll switch up their lineup just like that, just to get something going. So not too surprised there, but another great season for Hebron volleyball, and another pretty good all-around athletic year for Hebron. They're sitting in the top 20 of the Lone Star Cup standings again, which 4 teams from that district are in the top 20 right now.
That's crazy.
Carroll, Hebron, Marcus, and Flower Mound. But they got silver medal at the girls' state cross country meet. They made the playoffs in 5 of 8 sports: volleyball, football, boys basketball, girls soccer, and softball. And then also Jenny Park closed out the year with a bronze medal at the girls golf state tournament. So not only team success, but some individuals that had strong seasons for Hebron this season.
Beyond the volleyball team and all they were able to accomplish, were there any of the other programs that made the playoffs that kind of jumped out and had particularly strong years?
Well, it's just so tough. I really enjoyed covering this Hebron football team. They were a fun team to watch. They since I've been here, I would say this is maybe the strongest team they've had, but they're in a district with 2 teams that made the 4th round, so they finished 3rd, and that set them up with the eventual state champion in the first round. So just, tough competition, tough draw. But I still think that was a really good Hebron football team. The boys basketball team won the district again for the second straight year. Unfortunately, they were upset for the second straight year. And then the softball team had a very good season, and that's kind of a good sign going forward because they have almost their whole team back, so that's going to be a real strong softball team next year as well.
And then I saw Hebron play basketball against Little Elm in non-district play, and they had Bridges, what's his name?
Bridges,
he was one of the best athletes I saw all year too. He's going to
He's an Oklahoma
football,
wide receiver in football,
Yeah, he was by far the most athletic player on the court.
Yeah,
and that's on the same floor as RJ Hampton.
Yeah, and I've been told that if he, wasn't so focused on football, that he could get a basketball scholarship pretty much anywhere he wanted. But sticking with football, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the top receivers in the state, so it's been a very wise career choice on that front. Obviously, Hebron does its thing, and Louisville ISD is consistent as it comes within that district. But you also cover Carrollton-Farmers branch ISD. When you look back at this year for CFB, just kind of anything that jumps out there.
I think what has to jump out initially is some of their individual success, and they had two athletes at Creekview that wrapped up very productive high school careers. In girls swimming, Jennifer Rosler, and in boys golf, Kyle Cox, each made the state meet and tournament respectively, and for each of them, that's 4 years in a row making it. So Kyle Cox made the 5A boys state tournament all 4 years he was at Creekview, and Jennifer Rosler made the state tournament or state meet in swimming all 4 years. She just missed out. She got fourth behind an athlete that we'll talk about later that was on the podium, but so good individual seasons, and unfortunately in the team sports it didn't work out too well for the CFB schools. Only Turner boys soccer, they're the only team that made the playoffs. They did get a win beating Frisco Reedy and get into the area round, but that was the only team in the 8 team sports. That was the only one that got out to the playoffs from CFB, so tough all around year for them.
One name that just sprung to mind for Creekview, they had a high jumper, Gabriel Willis, and he made it to state as well.
Right,
he won the district meet. Actually, no, he finished second at the district meet, won the area meet, finished second at regionals.
I think he was maybe 6th at state or something.
Something along that range. I also went through and just checked because, there's no we've mentioned it time and time again, they were in a really tough district. A very top-heavy district with Prosper, Little Elm, McKinney North, etc. So a lot of the biggest games of the year for CFB ISD came against each other. And I went through and just tabulated the head-to-head records just to see who the unofficial city champion was.
Can I venture a guess?
Sure, go for it.
So I'm going to go with Newman Smith.
Good job, brother. Newman Smith had a 19-11 record against Turner and Creekview this year. Second place in that in the unofficial city championship rankings was Creekview, and then RL Turner bringing up the rear. So shout out to the Trojans on a strong year as well. So is there anything else you wanted to add before we move on to Little Elm? Or?
No, just it'll be interesting to see how these teams transition in these new districts, as we kind of talked about in those previous podcasts.
So then let's take a look at another market that was very 14-5A centric. Brian, you were around those Little Elm Lobos all season. Just when you kind of reflect on 2017-18 at Little Elm, what jumps out at you?
Football, they didn't make the playoffs. They started the year off hot, 3-0 for the first time in over a decade, and then they fall short late in the year. They lose to Lake Dallas, they lose to McKinney North. So you kind of got to look at Lobos football. Still a great year, finished 7-3, and still don't make the playoffs. But they make the playoffs in 5 of the 8 team sports. Allie Ziem in tennis made it to state for the 2nd straight year. She's going to be a senior next year, so maybe a 3rd straight trip to state there, who knows. Girls volleyball back on the map thanks to Carrington Jones and head coach Amber Hughes. She came from Duncanville in the offseason. They finished 8-6. They gave Reedy everything they had in that first round playoff series. So Lobos volleyball looks like they're headed in the right direction. Look here, girls soccer, they lose their head coach this week, Jimmy Langford. Stay tuned for that story as well. He's headed to Wakeland. But Lobos soccer, their best players were all sophomores and juniors, so they look like they're on the come up. They made the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. And then boys basketball. Oh, man. Boys basketball is fun at Little Elm as long as RJ Hampton is there. And it looks like he's going to come back. I don't see why he wouldn't come back for his junior year. 5A, Class 5A Player of the Year in the state of Texas. Number 2 ranked player in the sophomore class, in the class of 2020. In the state as well, or in the country, I should say. Number 2 on ESPN's rankings. He just got an offer from Duke a few weeks ago. So boys basketball was the highlight easily of this past year and should be for next year and maybe the years to come as well.
I got to see that boys basketball team against eventual Class 6A state champion Allen during Allen's winter tournament, and I mean it was my first look at RJ Hampton, and just when you factor in Allen had their defense, as it would show throughout the playoffs, was just lights out all year, and I think Hampton still scored like 34 points against them.
That was the thing. Every time RJ took the floor, he was getting double teamed. He was the focal point of every team. Every district game, every non-district game, every playoff game, and he was still getting like the most quiet 30 points you've ever seen. It was like at halftime he had 18, and it's like, how did he do that? It was just so smooth for him, and he does everything on the court. He was I forgot who coined him this, but Mr. Triple Double, because he was getting 10 assists, almost 10 rebounds a game. Yeah, so didn't they lose that game off a buzzer beater?
Oh, against Allen? Yeah. Their sixth man, Corey Jones, had a putback at the buzzer.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was something heartbreaking. Yeah. Little Elm basketball is fun.
And he had a pretty good shotgun rider as well with Javian Williams.
See, that's a big loss. Yeah. And you look at him, he's about listed at 5'7" on some rosters, or really, you get close to him, he's about 5'6" tops. Man, but that guy can light it up. Man, he's one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter I saw all year. I believe against the Colony, he had 11 threes in one of the games against the Colony. Yeah, so he was a good sidekick for RJ Hampton, all-district competitor. So, but we'll see how they can replace that void next year.
Any other, whether it was teams or individual athletes, anybody else jump off the page at Little Elm for you during 2017-18?
Well, I got to give a shout out to Kim Oliphant and girls basketball. They lost their entire starting lineup, almost an entire new roster in general on the girls basketball team. They had a rough stretch. They didn't make the playoffs, but I think they'll be headed in the right direction next year, possibly hopefully a playoff berth in the new district next year.
All right, so we got two more markets on the docket. We're still going to talk about Lake Cities and the Colony, and we will pick that up after a word from this sponsor.
Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now. Everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
And we continue our year in review, a recap of the high school athletics years that were for all 14 of our markets. And we're going to continue now with a look at Lake Cities, and a market that I got to cover quite a bit this year with the Lake Dallas Falcons and the job that they did. I think this year for Lake Dallas was kind of a big redemption year almost across the board. Like 2016-17, there's no sugarcoating it. That was a really tough year. And in their first swim through 14-5A, they made the playoffs in just one of the 8 major bracket sports. And it was volleyball. So it was the very first one that had a postseason, and then they were a lot of 5th place finishes and just kind of fallen just shy the rest of the way. But they
especially coming off their big football year too.
I know, yeah, where they made the state semis or whatnot. Yeah, so it was. But they they returned to form in quite a few sports this year. They made the playoffs in 5 of the 8 bracket sports. They made the playoffs in volleyball and in football, girls basketball, boys soccer, baseball, and that's 5. And they were within earshot of a district title in a couple of those sports. They were playing because of the way that the district schedule was aligned. They played Prosper that last week, so that game in football was Lake Dallas could have won the. Could have won the district title in that final game, and then ditto for the baseball team. So they had just a bounce back year almost across the board. The 2 teams that really kind of jump off the page was the boys soccer team. The boys soccer team had hands down its best year ever. They just snapped program records all across the board. In 2018, they set program records for district wins, goals scored, shutouts. They had their first ever tournament win, and then obviously the big one was they had their first ever playoff win when they beat Frisco Lone Star 3-1 in the bi-district round, and they were within a hairline of getting of going 3 rounds deep, except they a late rally by Lovejoy in the area round sent the Falcons packing. But the boys soccer team, by any estimation, had its best year in program history. The football team was just fun to watch all year as they bounced back. That team had a penchant for winning some really close games, whether it was, like we mentioned, against Little Elm or the Colony. I mean, they really thrived in close quarters, and obviously that's going to be a fun team to cover.
Were they involved in like the Homer call or something?
I was just about to get to that. So the one game that really jumps out when you look at
steal your thunder there.
No, look at the regular season was week 2 against Frisco Centennial, and this was one that I was again like it's a non-district game. There's not really much in the way of expectations going into that one, but it had this this ridiculous finish that gained some area-wide acclaim, as was prominently featured on the Homer Call of the Week segment of Bad Radio on the ticket.
Yeah.
And,
you were at that game, right, at Frisco Memorial?
Yes, I was. Yeah. So I'm trying to find my game story. Basically, it was a very back and forth game, and then they traded the lead a couple times in the fourth quarter, and then just all chaos broke loose when Lake Dallas scores a touchdown. They've got a chance to tie the game on a 2-point conversion. They don't get it, but then they recover the ensuing onside kick. And this is I think inside the final minute, so they've obviously got a chance at the win. They're able to get down into field goal range after executing a hook and ladder play, which was, it was nuts. You could hear people in the press box, like I guess that Lake Dallas radio crew, those folks just going berserk. You never see that executed at the high school level as too often. But yeah, Lake Dallas is able to get into field goal range, so they bring out the field goal unit, and they've clocked the ball. It's inside. I think it's like 5 seconds left or something like that. So enough to get off a kick and then send this thing home. So they line up for the field goal, and there was a false start. And there was some kind of confusion as to what that meant. Some folks on Centennial thought that there was supposed to be a runoff and that they won the game. Yeah. So Centennial kind of starts, this kind of, not to say storm the field, but Centennial players start walking on the field like in victory and whatnot and celebrating, except that's not how it works. You don't get a runoff on a false start, so they just simply back Lake Dallas up 5 yards, and then Marcial Paez drills it was like a 32, 36 yard or something in that range to win the game. 37-36, and just a really a thrilling game on all accounts, and a tough one for the Titans in the moment, but a game that really did kind of set the course for a real strong return to prominence for Lake Dallas. It was I think at the end of the year when I did my top 5 games that I covered, I think I had that number 2. I want to say it was just a thrilling game to watch. Some of these standout athletes for Lake Dallas this year, they had all district superlatives won by Mason Meeks, who was the pitcher of the year in 14-5A baseball. Blake Henson got co-MVP on the boys soccer team. Caleb Irving got co-goalkeeper also for boys soccer. Ryan Depperschmidt was the co-offensive MVP in football. Zalem Long, co-defensive MVP in football, and Kylie Smith, co-offensive utility player of the year in football. 14-5A had a tough time naming outright winners in the superlatives, hence all of those co-awards. But hey, still I say pound for pound. I'm going to write a column later this week for the Lake City Sun about it. But just a nice redemption year for Lake Dallas.
Depperschmidt made the superlatives for baseball also, right?
Did he? Was he like the offensive player of the year?
At least first team all district. He might have been offensive player of the year.
Wouldn't shock me.
I think.
Ryan Depperschmidt couldn't do much wrong in 2017-18.
I know he wasn't the outright MVP because that was the Colony's Jordan Oliveira.
Yeah. Let's see. He actually was. Yeah, he was named Offensive Player of the Year in that district. So double accolades for Ryan Depperschmidt, who will be obviously returning in both of those sports next year to lead the Falcons. It's a look at Lake Dallas in the year that was in 2017-18. Justin, let's round this out with another 14-5A program, the Colony.
Yep. And another good all-around athletic year for the Colony, like Lake Dallas. Kind of depends on how you want to look at it, kind of judging last year versus this year. They didn't win a football playoff game. They obviously didn't win a state championship like they did, but they did have all 8 teams make the playoffs in the bracketed team sports. So that's
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
You expect we've always talked a ton about Prosper doing that, but I didn't. Wow, it completely slipped my mind.
One sport where they just had a down year, or
if they might have had down years, but they still got to the playoffs. So, but yeah, all 8 team sports. And then not only just getting to the playoffs, they found some success. You know, the volleyball team hadn't won a playoff game since 2010. They got that done, upsetting Liberty in the first round, even though they were technically the higher seed. But I think everybody would still kind of say that was a little bit of an upset there. And then the baseball team, as we were just mentioning, Jordan Oliveira, they had never won a playoff series, and they took down Lone Star in 3 games in the bi-district round to get their first win ever. And then the girls basketball team came just short of the regional tournament. They lost a real heartbreaker to Liberty in the regional quarterfinals, but still another really solid year for the Colony's girls basketball team too.
Felt like that. You mentioned that girls basketball team. It felt like that was because they lost. One of the best players in the state the year before. But at the same time, I remember when we were, previewing the playoffs for the on the podcast way back then. It was like, let's not sleep on the Colony. They've still got they lost Jade Williams, who is maybe the best. I think the best player that program has ever had. But there's still several players there who made who were all part of it.
Jules Spear and Tamia Jones, and then the senior Aaliyah Clark, who's moving on, who was the defensive player of the year in the district, and then another multi-year starter, and Chloe Adame. So they still had plenty of talent, and they showed it. They didn't repeat as district champions, finishing behind Prosper, but they gave Prosper a couple good games, and then, like I said, we're just within a bucket or two of getting back to the regional tournament again. So,
and even the softball team, obviously the expectations were through the roof for them coming into this year.
But you look at it now, it looks it's a tough loss in the second round of the team that ends up being the state champion. So. No shame there.
And then in the individual sports, you had quite a few standouts as well.
Yeah, especially you got to start with Emma Garfield, Arkansas signee in the pool, and she won more medals. She got gold in the breaststroke and set this 5A state record there, and also got silver in the 200 IM. Wow. She's another one that she should have been at state 4 years in a row. She made it as a freshman. She actually didn't go as a sophomore because she was doing Olympic qualifying stuff.
Wow.
So she sat out. She did the district meet and then sat out regional and state from UIL, but she came right back as a junior, won gold and silver, and then repeated both of those medals as a senior. So and she owns, literally, if you go into that aquatic center in the Colony there, her name is next to every event, literally, that she participated in. She has the school record in every event, so awesome year for her.
I wonder if you don't know which event which record she doesn't have, or
I think there's just like a couple that she didn't do.
It would just be
Morgan Gillette has the longer distance freestyle ones, I believe.
Because at that point you're just I want to complete this. I want to clean sweep this. I'm surprised, just for some throwaway meet, coach, let me swim the 500 free this time.
Well, she might have had that 500 free until maybe Morgan Gillette took it earlier this year or something. And it's funny too, because all the records she have, it used to be head coach Shannon Peel's records, and now all her records are, or it's Jennifer Peel, excuse me. I always say Shannon. Jennifer Peel. She used to have all those records, and she would always send me a little, I lost another record to Emma. And then also, they didn't get back to state, but the Colony's cross-country teams are very young and on the rise, so they should be teams to look out for next year as well.
Yeah, kind of that same accord. The track teams are some of the more impressive ones that I got to cover. And I was sort of dipping my toes in 14-5A and the 13-5A Frisco schools at those meets. They were always neck and neck up there for the district title. So.
And then I guess going back to football real quick though, because it was it could have been a real tough season losing standout quarterback Jamel Jones.
Very fair,
And Mikey Harrington steps in as a sophomore, never played varsity before, and gets the Colony back to the playoffs for the 5th year in a row, out of a pretty quality district, as we discussed earlier.
So that's a look at 4 of our markets. So we're halfway home. We got 3 last week, 4 this week. So hey folks, appreciate you for checking out this podcast. We will again pick this up next Monday as we touch on 3 more markets, play some talk some year interview stuff. Otherwise, hey Brian, Justin, appreciate y'all for tagging along. We'll continue the podcast later this week on Thursday with another edition of our kind of our question series. We'll pull 2 more questions and just kind of have a bit of an open-ended discussion on that. So make sure y'all are around to check that out. Otherwise, this has been Matt Welch with Star Local Media. Y'all enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.
Thanks again for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast, brought to you by Yale Butcher Shop, a meat market and burger joint based in Plano. It's summertime, folks. The temperatures are going to start heating up, and what a better way to break into that summer heat than to break out the grill, do some barbecuing. Well, guess what? Yale Butcher Shop has you covered. They can help you with everything from catering, grilling, barbecuing, or any special occasion, serving the finest cuts of meat from everyday to exotics. They are located at 811 East 15th Street in Plano, open Tuesday through Saturday. A smoking good time since 1974, Yale Butcher Shop.